Hey folks, we hope you've had a wonderful holiday season. Welcome to another episode of us delaying what we know will be a slog to make. This one involves us explaining the different aliens and/or supernatural monsters in the Puppet Combo mythos, as well as speculating as to what their presence implies for the broader lore going forward. More specifically, we're going to discuss what their appearances are, their species, allegiances, motives, MOs, and relations to the CFV. Any entity in the mythos that can't be considered a natural creature since they haven't been documented in the real world will be on this list, and just to clarify, this doesn't include the aliens from Planet of Bloodthirsty Santa, as we'll have a specific video dedicated to them. Isn't that fitting for the winter season? Of course, a lightning-fast nun who cries motor oil hasn't definitively been proven to exist, but just so you know, we plan on making a separate video dedicated to supernatural game antagonists. So, with that out of the way, here it is, Puppet Combo's Supernatural Creatures Explained. If we're starting off in alphabetical order, it's convenient that we begin with the most recognizable supernatural monster, that being the bunker creature. Being a quite huge, seemingly white-skinned, red-lit, oval-shaped monster with 2 sharp arms, 3 sarlacc pit-looking tentacles coming out of its mouth, and pointy teeth lining that very mouth, this thing is something visually appealing in a house containing nothing you'd want to see. On top of being the embodiment of what Lovecraft would concoct if he was running out of ideas, the monster seems to reside in a room within the butcher's house, featuring an interior seemingly made wholly out of flesh. How's that for durable architecture? Stay out of the house, because if anyone finds out who its tenants are, its market value is gonna plunge to nothing. Probably relating to the monster in one way or the other are pulsating eggs that hang from the ceiling and protrude from the floor. It specifically feeds on the flesh of people who are thoroughly scared. As to why it does this, we can't say for now. There's 2 major plot points in each of the endings to stay out of the house, in which the monster's presence is crucial. The first is in the Rebirth ending, in which the player manages to get Roxanne through most of the Butcher's network of underground tunnels into the red door at the end. Here, Roxanne gets turned around, knocked out, and then after the screen cuts to black for a few seconds, the word Rebirth in all caps appears on the screen. She's taken to a room in which she wakes up only to find herself bound inside the aforementioned flesh room, in which the patterns on the walls appear to be spinning. The Butcher is standing to the left of the monster in an almost subordinate position as the creature moves its central tentacle forward. Its tentacle hovers over Roxanne for a moment as the same calls for help sound effects from Night Watch play. Guess Puppet Combo thought we wouldn't catch that. The creature's tentacle then lunges forward and Roxanne is presumably devoured as the screen quickly cuts to black and the game's logo appears on the screen. The other route the player can take with the story actually doesn't have the monster appear on screen but involves the creature dying. Specifically, when Roxanne gets to the garage of the underground tunnel network, she finds a guy who's on the floor dying. He refers to the monster as a demon and tells Roxanne to destroy the whole facility via shutting down the reactor. That way, the facility's system will melt down, ending the creature. He mentions 2 keys downstairs that can get Roxanne access to the code, but before he finishes, he dies. After a very long series of events in the gameplay, Roxanne inserts 2 keys into the reactor, and pushes a sequence of buttons in a correct order as to generate a code so the core can explode, giving her just enough time to have a final showdown with the Butcher and escape, only for the screen to smash cut to black, and then fade into a doctor and nurse looking up at Roxanne. The doctor insists that she'll be back to her old self after she gets some rest, and then it fades to a long black screen. A thumping sound effect plays as the word mother in all caps pops up on screen. It then abruptly cuts to Roxanne moaning in pain during the night while she's laying in bed, but things aren't getting horny unless you're one of those tentacle people. A monster tentacle then comes out of her mouth and shrieks. The game then cuts to the same hospital room, but it's tinted red, and the outside corridor is dark, but only has its windows colored solid red. The player can explore a bit at this point, and if they venture into other rooms, they'll find pulsating sacks of flesh laying on the beds in place of where humans should be. Just show them private health insurance costs, and these aliens would hop on their UFOs and get off the planet in no time. If the player gets far enough, they'll find what look like egg sacs from earlier hanging from the ceiling and protruding out from the floor of what looks like the main lobby. Once the player exits into the come-together music video background colored abyss, the game's logo pops up on screen, and the game ends. As for its relation to the cult, the members clearly respect and deify it to one extent or another, considering their ambition is to kidnap random people, instill fear in them, and feed them to the monster. The entity's hunger for flesh is probably why the CFV exists in the first place, i.e. for the purposes of recruiting people willing to feed them their own species. Although there's no hierarchical structure among CFE creatures we know of. We'd assume this one would be somewhere near the top of the chain of command if we're going off the monsters presented to us, that seem to be the most efficient at eating humans. And even if the monster was vulnerable to this really unstable reactor that kept the facility running, in both the mother and escape endings, the player ends up with one of the tentacles protruding out of them, with their alien-controlled body ready to do God knows what to random people. Like in lots of horror media, the protagonist loses and the antagonist wins no matter what decisions are made. Of the monsters we have more than just a sliver of information of, this one seems to be the most powerful, or failing that, the one that will always have some sort of trick up their sleeve, especially long term. Up next is the Cheek Freak, and need we say more for this entry on the list, folks? We laugh our asses off every time this character gets brought up. He leaves us cracked up but whole. The Cheek Freak is a supernatural entity and antagonist of the mostly self-titled Booty Creek Cheek Freak game. This dump truck driver, we know, subtle, right? Turned Jeff the Killer smile-having ass for a head-possessing Slender Man in a gimsuit sort of creature uses a knife, of all things, to kill his victims. We would have gone with suffocating them with a colostomy bag. Can smell ass from light years away, and to be honest, if we could smell nothing but last night's chorizos passed through someone's large intestine, we'd have nothing but the urge to stab someone as well. In his own piece of IP, Gary and Connor are two buddies camping, and they're told by an old man about the Cheek Freak. Specifically, he tells the two not to take a dump on the floor in a specific stall where the man who's now known as the Cheek Freak died. Predictably, Connor accidentally takes a shit on the very floor he was told not to do it on, and then after chasing Connor, the Cheek Freak rips his ass cheeks off. The freak then captures Connor and for some reason doesn't take his cheeks immediately. Rather, he just leaves him knocked out in his underground network of tunnels, as having some sort of monotonous maze is a requirement for being a Puppet Combo antagonist, so you actually have a game to be in. Connor needs to find 6 bones while avoiding the scent of the Cheek Freak, and maintaining the suppression of his ass scent. The spray bottles aren't really health, in the sense that they heal the player from damage already incurred. Rather, they replenish the scent meter, which just gradually declines after a period of time, naturally leading the player to balance, finding spray bottles and bones. If the player successfully collects all 6 of the bones, and flushes them down the toilet, the Cheek Freak instantly appears and spontaneously combusts in front of Connor. Right before fully dying, the freak pops out a stick of dynamite, which explodes and destroys his whole facility. What especially speaks to his power, or inability to use it well as we'll come to find, is that he can shapeshift, smell with an unnatural ability to do so, and most notably, teleport from place to place in an instant. The fact that he can go from point A to point B in no time raises a crucial question. Why can't he just periodically teleport to each of his bones from time to time? Or just guard one so Connor will never be able to get the last one? Reasons like this are why we've decided the freak probably isn't the most powerful entity on this list. Any good villain has to have a sizable enough intellect to where better strategies can be found by lightly speculating for a few seconds. We guess Asshat here doesn't meet our standards. Up next is the Demon Dog, who's been dubbed Old Yeller. This bull terrier-like hound is hairless, lacks eyes, and has a malformed jaw. He probably isn't the basement creature species, rather, he's more likely a product of the radiation testing that's been conducted in the tunnel network, similar to the other mutant farm animals. A mostly unremarkable and weak entity. Next up is the mountain creature from Ski Freak. The best comparison we can make from recognizable culture to this monster is saying it's pretty much a Yeti. Since what most of Ski Freak's gameplay consists of is skiing between the flags while avoiding obstacles on the path, the Yeti chases after you so you complete each run in time. The Yeti can maul the player to death and can travel insanely fast speeds, especially considering the distance someone could cover while skiing for their life downhill. It just trails that. It can also maim humans in an instant, so this entity can absolutely be a contender for most powerful on this list, especially if we're purely judging by raw strength. Up next are the spiders, and we're gonna treat this entry as distinct from the others in the list because we're judging this entry collectively, whereas the other creatures are individuals. These seemingly mutated arachnids, who are the game's namesake, try to kill the protagonist and his family. The spiders can ultimately be organized into 4 different tiers, the first of which includes the common spiders, which do exactly what they sound like. They chip away at the wooden planks the player boards up the house with, and once they get through, they start attacking the player, occasionally spinning webs in the later levels. The next tier is burrowing spiders, who also do exactly what they sound like they do, in that these spiders can burrow under the ground and up through the floor of the house. They're pesky animals that are a total pain to deal with, especially because they appear in droves in later levels. They also take more hits than common spiders. Whoop-de-fuck. In the next tier, there's actually a boss. The Black Widow just spins a lot of webs, and the strategy to kill it is to run back and forth in a spacious position of the house, stop momentarily to shoot it, and then rinse and repeat. The next tier includes the final boss, the Spider Queen. She shoots really huge projectiles, and she takes 1,000,000 hits to fully kill. The spider's connection with the CFE is unclear, but all we know is that we hate them. Succeeding them on the list is a creature simply known as the Hole, which is the Sarlacc pit-looking thing that has massive spike teeth lining a hole in a room made of flesh that leads to God knows where. It appeared in Billy's closet one day and needed to be fed, as the title suggests, which forced Billy to go around with a gun and mask from his CFV parcel, killing innocent people and feeding it to the Hole. On the last day of the game, a goat floats up above it, and the game ends. One ability of note that the Hole has is that it can disappear, making Billy's closet look normal and reappear when it wants to eat. However, this ability seems to be limited to Billy's place of residence, so we don't consider this creature to be very externally powerful. To finish off this list, the zombies, also called the undead, are just that. Animated corpses that appear in many Puppet Combo games, but we're going to focus on Night at the Gates of Hell. In that game, most of them are slow, and just moan to sell that not fully dead effect. Sometimes they're unique, and other times they're rank and file. They kill David if they get too close to him, and it seems like their only weakness is knives, which in this game aren't manually equipped by the player so they can fend off enemies, but are automatically used and then require replenishing. Yeah, we know, a very odd weapon system. Another method of killing them is shooting them in the head with a revolver. To not have to deal with zombies, please don't experiment with occult, sort of wooey voodoo curses. It doesn't end well. Or do, just don't make it our mess to clean up if George Romero's brain children are all over the place. Well, that's it for this upload, folks. Part 2 to the iceberg is in the works.